The winter
This
wind
snow
blew
is
sharply
relentless
through the
tonight.
busy city
Yeah, but it's
streets,
beautiful, so
making
quiet.
people walk
Just keep
faster
moving,
as
we'll
they
be fine.
hurried toward their warm homes. Snow from the previous night still covered the sidewalks, and the air was so cold that even breathing felt painful.
Shh, it's okay, I've
Outside
got
a
you.
tall glass office building,
We're almost there.
employees in
Hang
warm
on.
coats stepped out one by one. After finishing their long workday, most of them were busy checking their phones or calling for taxis, barely noticing the world around them. Near the corner of the building, a small boy stood quietly. He looked no older than 8 years old. His thin jacket was too old and far too light for the freezing weather. His shoes were worn and his small hands trembled as he held a tiny baby wrapped in a faded blanket. The baby was his little sister. She was only a few months old, and her soft cries could barely be heard over the cold wind. The boy gently rocked her in his arms, trying his best to keep her warm. "It's okay, I'm here," he whispered softly, though his own teeth were chattering from the cold. People walked past them without stopping. Some glanced at the boy for a moment, but quickly looked away. Everyone had somewhere to go, somewhere warm waiting for them, but the boy had nowhere. His name was Daniel, and the baby in his arms was his sister Lily. Their mother had been taken to the hospital earlier that day, after collapsing from exhaustion. Daniel didn't know which hospital she had been taken to, and with no relatives nearby and no money in his pocket, he had wandered through the city streets, holding Lily and hoping someone would help. The cold was getting worse. Lily's cries grew weaker, and Daniel felt fear tightening in his chest. Just then, the large glass doors of the office building opened again. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped outside. He was the CEO of the company that owned the entire building, a man known for his sharp mind and busy schedule. His name was Mr. Jonathan Carter. He had just finished a long day of meetings and negotiations. His driver was already waiting nearby to take him home. As he walked toward the car, Daniel watched him carefully. The man looked important, powerful. Even for a moment, Daniel hesitated. What if he got angry? What if he ignored him like everyone else? But when Lily shivered again in his arms, Daniel gathered the last bit of courage he had. He slowly stepped forward. "Sir," his small voice called out. Mr. Carter paused. Daniel's lips trembled as he looked up at the tall man. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." For a moment, the busy street seemed to fall silent. Mr. Carter turned fully toward the boy. His eyes moved from the child's pale face to the tiny baby, wrapped in the thin blanket. The baby's cheeks were red from the cold, and her small fingers were barely moving. Something in Mr. Carter's chest tightened. Without saying a word, he removed his long, expensive wool coat. Then he stepped closer to the boy and gently wrapped the warm coat around both children. The warmth immediately surrounded them. Daniel's eyes widened with surprise, and for the first time that freezing night, someone had finally stopped to care. The warm coat instantly surrounded Daniel and his baby sister Lily. For the first time in hours, Daniel felt a little warmth against his frozen hands. Lily's soft crying slowly became quieter. As the warmth of the coat covered her tiny body, Daniel looked up at the tall man in front of him with wide, grateful eyes. "Thank you, sir," he said softly, his voice still shaking from the cold. Mr. Jonathan Carter stood silently for a moment, looking at the two children. He had seen many difficult situations in his life as a businessman, but something about this moment felt different. The small boy's courage to step forward and ask for help touched him deeply. Mr. Carter slowly knelt down so he could speak to Daniel at eye level. "What's your name, son?" he asked in a calm voice. "Daniel." The boy replied. "And the baby, my sister Lily." Mr. Carter looked at the tiny baby sleeping weakly inside the coat. Her face was pale and her little nose was red from the freezing air. "Where are your parents, Daniel?" Mr. Carter asked gently. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but he tried to stay strong. "Our mom, she got really sick today." He explained an ambulance took her to the hospital this morning. "I don't know which one." Mr. Carter frowned slightly. "Do you have any other family nearby?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "No, sir." For a moment, Mr. Carter looked around the cold street. Cars were passing, people were walking quickly, and the icy wind continued to blow through the city. This was no place for two small children, especially a baby. Lily suddenly shivered again in Daniel's arms. That was enough. Mr. Carter stood up and waved toward the black luxury car waiting by the sidewalk. His driver, who had been watching from a distance, quickly stepped out and opened the back door. "Come with me," Mr. Carter said kindly. Daniel hesitated for a second. unsure if he should trust a stranger, but the warmth of the coat and the kindness in the man's voice made him feel safe. Mr. Carter carefully lifted Lily into his arms. The baby was so light that it surprised him. She barely stirred as he held her close, protecting her from the cold wind. "Let's get you both somewhere warm," he said. Daniel followed him slowly to the car. The driver watched in surprise as his boss gently placed the baby in the back seat and helped Daniel climb inside. Mr. Carter then sat beside them and closed the door. "Turn the heat on," he told the driver. Warm air quickly filled the car. Daniel sighed with relief. As the feeling slowly returned to his frozen fingers, Mr. Carter looked at the small boy sitting beside him and realized something important. Every night he drove home alone to his large, quiet mansion, but tonight would be different. As the car began moving through the snowy streets, Mr. Carter made a sudden decision. Instead of heading to his empty house alone, he would take these two children somewhere safe, somewhere warm, somewhere they would not have to face the cold ever again. The black car drove smoothly through the snowy streets. While warm air filled the inside, Daniel sat quietly still, holding the edge of the large coat wrapped around him and his baby sister for the first time that night. He no longer felt the painful cold biting his skin. Lily slept peacefully in Mr. Carter's arms. Mr. Jonathan Carter looked down at the tiny baby and felt a strange warmth in his heart. He had spent years building companies, signing contracts and making difficult business decisions, but at this moment, none of that felt as important as helping the two children beside him. After about 20 minutes, the car stopped in front of a large, beautiful house surrounded by tall gates and soft golden lights. Daniel's eyes widened with surprise. He had never seen a house so big before. Mr. Carter stepped out of the car. While still holding Lily carefully, the driver opened the door for Daniel, who slowly climbed out and looked around nervously. "Don't worry," Mr. Carter said gently. "You're safe here." They walked inside the warm house, where a housekeeper quickly came forward in surprise. "Sir, you're back early," she said. "I need some help." Mr. Carter replied calmly, "Please bring warm blankets and prepare some food." Within minutes, soft blankets were wrapped around Daniel and Lily. The baby remained asleep, warm and comfortable. Daniel sat at the dining table, while a bowl of hot soup and fresh bread were placed in front of him. At first he hesitated, then hunger took over. He began eating quickly and tears slowly filled his eyes. Thank you so much," he whispered. Mr. Carter sat across from him, quietly watching the boy eat. Daniel then slowly told him everything about their life. Their small apartment, their hard-working mother, and the moment she collapsed earlier that day. Mr. Carter listened carefully. The next morning he immediately sent his assistant to find out which hospital Daniel's mother had been taken to. By afternoon they found her. She had been suffering from severe exhaustion and illness, but thankfully she was alive. Mr. Carter arranged for the best treatment and paid all the medical bills without hesitation. When Daniel's mother later learned how a stranger had protected her children during the freezing night, she broke down in tears of gratitude. But Mr. Carter simply smiled. What began as a small boy's desperate words, "Sir, my baby sister is freezing," had become the beginning of a new chapter in all of their lives. And from that day forward, Daniel, Lily, and their mother would never face the cold alone again. The winter wind blew sharply through the busy city streets, making people walk faster as they hurried toward their warm homes.